Now, I assume most of you that listen to this show, you do it because you're a news and information junkie, and that attracts you to talk radio. So you already know that the president of the United States said yesterday after the U.S. Supreme Court, uh, essentially because it was a tie vote, 4-4, rejected his effort to try and grant amnesty to millions and millions of people who are here illegally, which of course means they won't be able to vote for his candidate in the November election. That's what he's really upset about. But his response was, I don't care. I'm the emperor. I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. As if somehow he can get away with this. The laws don't apply to him. They apply to everybody else, but they don't apply to him. And I'm telling you, this is the direction of our country right now. And what worries me is this is exactly what liberals want. They'd like to just rule people, lord it over you, and tell you that they know best, and that if you disagree, they're going to just, smack you over the head. It's the old French Revolution story all over again, where after the revolution, when certain people wouldn't follow the directives of those people who were in charge, because the people in charge thought they were the smartest people in the country, they started lopping off heads at the guillotine over and over and over again. Meanwhile, this is from a woman by the name of Jessica Rosenthal reporting for Fox News in California. When I hear the phrase undocumented immigrants, it just makes my blood boil because there's nothing undocumented about them. A dope dealer is not an undocumented pharmacist, and a bank robber is not making an undocumented withdrawal. They are here illegally. They know they are here illegally, and they are looking for a free lunch. But listen to them whine because of the Supreme Court's decision.
Undocumented immigrant Veronica Nieto stood with immigrant rights activists and attorneys in San Francisco after the Supreme Court decision and cried.
Venimos aquí para darles una mejor vida a nuestros hijos.
As working class families, we're here to give our kids a better future. We're not asking for anything from the government.
Maria Hernandez, who was also translated, was outraged.
Obama, listen to us. You have lied to us. You have used us, but you can still do something. You can stop these deportations.
Immigrants' rights attorneys around the Southwest say they will continue to fight this issue. One group is asking the Justice Department to seek a rehearing when a ninth justice is appointed. This decision was a 4-4 split since the death of Antonin Scalia has left a vacant seat on the court. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
First of all, if you need a translator, here's a quick message for you. Then go home. I don't owe you my tax money. I don't owe you a free lunch. You got it? Go home. 909 Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. 736-0300. Caller, you're up next.
Good morning, Bill. Thanks for getting my blood pressure up.
You're welcome.
You know, that whole thing right there says it in a nutshell. There's somebody that's undocumented on TV in front of everybody else, and nothing happens. That is why we're in trouble. And until everybody in our government, including our president himself, get held by the same standards as we, the people that vote them in, nothing will change, because we will be arrested for simple things and they will get away with it, a.k.a. Hillary Clinton. So, it's just a bunch of baloney. And then until it changes, until we make them abide by the laws that they like to make as lawyers, we're going to be under their thumb. Simple as that.
Yeah. And a friend of mine told me this yesterday. When you talk about two sets of laws, he commented on Facebook. He's a former police officer from over in the Mini-Cassia area, and he said, if you occupy a wildlife refuge, you get arrested or shot, and if you occupy the House floor, the media celebrates you. It just shows you that we're living in a country where the liberals have decided what's right and wrong, and nobody else can argue with that.
Well, they'll argue that they didn't take the floor with guns, but it's all a stunt, none the same. They say that the Second Amendment has to go, and that our Constitution is not set in stone. But yet, when it works in their favor, they stand on the mountainside with the Constitution in their hand and wave it, just like your caller this morning. They got all upset with Christians. They can dish it out and throw it in our face and throw us in mud until we can't see. But 1 minute we just say something or slap them with a little bit of water, and they're crying like a bunch of little babies.
Yep. I thank you much for the call. They remind me of that kid on the playground who ran up and spit in your face when you were little. So you hauled off and you decked him. And then he ran over to the playground monitor and said, Billy's being mean to me. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
We think about the Hispanics and the culture they bring, and, some of them really get it. Others don't have any intentions of ever doing anything other than sucking this sucker dry. And I read it at the time I was having a conversation with a gentleman, Hispanic gentleman, and obviously I don't know if he was legal or not, but it was questionable. And he said to me, well, if things get bad enough, I will have to start stealing from other people. And that was his intent. And it was straight up no BS about it. See, and so you see when you hear these Hispanics who are victims, like the ones we just heard, oh my God, this is unfair. We don't want anything. Well, that's horse crap. There's so many of them want to just suck this thing dry, and they have no intentions of worrying about it. And if we do ruin this thing, it will be dead. Well, it will never be the same.
Trump is right. This is the flotsam coming. The PhDs aren't coming here looking for work. It's the people who can't even read and write in their own language, and they're just being dumped here so their government can get rid of them. They're looking at this as the safety valve. They come here, and then they go down to your local food bank, and they go in and say, I'm hungry. Then they take the food down to the post office and send it back to Juarez. That's the theft that they're doing.
Yeah, they're experts at it. And they're the social underground. They spread the word, and they go in, and they are, you and I are. I have I have 11 children. Not one has ever been on welfare, and not one will ever be on welfare. And I tell you, some of my daughters have been divorced and through a few things, and it's not been easy. But they didn't go down and start sucking the system. Thanks, Bill.
Hey, thank you much for the telephone call, sir. 736-0300, 736-0300. I ran into a fellow at Walmart a couple of weeks ago in the checkout line, and I got to talking to him. He had an old ball cap on, and it read that he was a Vietnam veteran. And as he was talking, I thought, gosh, there's something familiar about this guy's voice. And first I thought maybe he was one of our regular callers. But then later on I figured out why it was, because he talks like I do. I'll mention that in a moment. But he said he retired from the computer industry after 40 years. And he decided to settle in Jerome, Idaho, because he thought, low taxes, easy life, beautiful countryside. And he said, little did I know that I was basically moving to a Latin country. So as we got talking, I said, well, at least I can say where I grew up, this was never much of a problem. I grew up in western New York State. And he said, well, I'm from Buffalo originally, but he won't go back there because they've got the same problem now. Now, fought for his country, wants a quiet retirement, and he's got to deal with people who are essentially trying to tear this country to pieces. 9:15, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. I recognized his accent is what I did, because as soon as you meet someone like that, you pick it up right away. Bill Colley with you on Top Story, and you're up next on KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. Bill, the Brits, like many of us, are sick and tired of our so-called leaders inviting and welcoming people who don't like us into our country. Yesterday in Germany, a guy took over a theater and threatened people, and they had to shoot him. And our cities all over the world now, we have to have specially trained police to protect us against the people that our so-called leaders welcome them into our countries.
Hey, thank you for the call. Quick question. Has anyone released the name of the shooter yet in Germany, who this guy was who went into the theater? Now, I heard apparently that he did not have any bullets in his gun, which, of course, sort of defeats the whole purpose if you want to create mayhem. But I'm looking at a Google search here. Police fatally shoot gunman who took hostages at German theater. What was his name? If his name, I guess we could say, local lunatic. But his name was Ahmed, let's say. Would that necessarily change the report just somewhat? Because I'm looking through the USA Today story. Guess what? It doesn't say what the fellow's name is. Gee golly gosh. Does that make you start to wonder? When you see the media on something like this, it just always leads you to believe that perhaps perhaps don't want you and someone from the religion of peace acting out. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying whenever I see the omission of something like a name, that it immediately leads me pointing in that direction. I can remember when I first took a job working in Delaware at my last talk radio station, 2007, and we had an arrest of two men who had been out spotlighting deer because they were looking to take deer out of season, of course, and they were heavily armed, and they got stopped and they got arrested. We looked at their names, and their names appeared to be Spanish in origin. So that the state police had a release about how they'd been arrested in illegal weapons and, illegally hunting out of season. On the East Coast, you call that deer jacking. But we went through it all, and there was nothing about their origins. So I worked with a young woman on the staff. Her father-in-law, Tom Evans, had been the former Republican national chairman, and she was pretty sharp too. It seemed to run in the family. And she called the state police and said, "Are these guys native-born Americans?" Well, no. Are they here legally? Well, no. But, their superiors in government didn't want them to actually put that in the news release. So you had a couple of illegal aliens who were here breaking the law, blatantly breaking the law, running around shooting out a truck window, by the way, near a crowded beach. And government said, well, just don't say that they're here, that they're illegal aliens, because that might give the impression that they break the law. They broke the law when they came here. And in Germany, if they don't tell us who this shooter was, it leads me to believe it might be one of those so-called migrants. But if they say it's a migrant, well, then by gosh, you might get the impression that somehow the migrants are causing crime when they come to Europe. And the mainstream media doesn't want you to know that. Let's figure out a way to hush this up as quickly as we can, because that's our job in media, is to skew the facts. That's how they taught us back in journalism school. They said, don't get mixed up in this stuff that, you're just walking down the middle of the highway here. No. Communism is good, and destroying the world and all of its governments is good, and one day we'll all live in peace and harmony when we do that. So that's your main mission when you take your job now, working as a news reporter. 20 minutes after. And tell me, you think that we see that, I don't know, in Idaho newspapers around the state here? Just a wee bit, perhaps. Maybe in the last week? Well, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. 65. Bill Colley with you this morning on News Radio 1310. KLIX, newsradio1310.com. 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. Hey, what I'm going to do after this break, I want to share with you. We talked earlier with Lance Earl from Amentu, Idaho, about the dog and pony show the Democrats are putting on to the House of Representatives. Wait until you hear how media is covering that versus how media covered the so-called government shutdown when Senator Cruz was behind that a few years ago. That's on the way.